Well, hello and welcome to 240. None of you are watching this live right now, but oh well. Hey, I'm having a bad hair day. Anyway, we're going to be continuing. Well, actually, we are on, I believe, I'm going to share screen here, and it is 9/11, awful date. Anyway, we are on Unit 3, Summary, Bill, Till, Programmable, and what else? How does that continue? Bill, Till, Programmable, Multi-Channel. Now, the purpose of this unit is really to take you to where analog hearing aids ended. And analog hearing aids ended in the mid-1990s. In 1997, the first digital hearing aid came out from Widex. It was called the Senso. Immediately on its heels was Oticon, who came out with a hearing aid called Digifocus. Digifocus. So those were the first two digital hearing aids out there on the market. But analog hearing aids were getting more and more sophisticated. They became programmable, they became multi-channel, and actually they just had two channels. And they used WDRC, they used output limiting compression. The purpose of today is to kind of summarize it all, just to kind of grab it all and just sort of give it a good push, and then we'll be done with this area of compression. Not quite, I lied. Next week, we're covering what's called the dynamic aspects of compression. And those concern what's called the attack and release times of compression. How quickly did compression kick in, and how quickly does it kick out? It's got nothing to do with the knee points and the ratios. It's mostly just a timing issue. And that also interacts with compression. You should have some passing awareness of that as well. I have a feeling next week's Zoom session will likely be shorter than an hour, because that unit 4, dynamic aspects of compression, right here, that's a fairly short unit. And you'll notice unit 5, that's where we got launched into digital hearing aids, big time. Okay, and likely that I think what's going to happen is units 1 through 4 will be covered on your midterm. And I think then units 5 and onward go on between your midterm and final exam. Maybe we'll start on unit 5 in just a bit, before the midterm, but I think we're a bit ahead of time, which is wonderful, because we'll have time to review, and that's the idea, okay? So I'll make this slide small. What we're going to do is look at our good old notes on summary, Bill, Till, Programmable, multi-channel. Bill and Till are two twins. No, Bill stands for bass increase at low levels, and Till stands for treble increase at low levels. And those were two types of wide dynamic range compression. So, hope you have this printed up. Have a look. The pages to read are indicated from pages 225 to 244. And you will recall, we do lots of looping back and forth here. Linear and output limiting are older types of hearing aids, but they are close cousins. Output limiting was the first compression used. WDRC in the early 1990s was the new kid on the block. Previous linear hearing aid wearers would often say, because what does WDRC fit? Mild to moderate sensory neural loss. And WDRC, as we've said in previous Zoom sessions, it addresses sensory neural loss. In other words, mild to moderate loss caused by damage mainly to outer hair cells. And what do outer hair cells do? Amplify soft sounds below 50 dB so that the inner hair cells can pick them up. Okay, so what happens with damage to outer hair cells? An inability to hear sounds softer than 50 dB. And we said last week, WDRC has as its focus the floor. In other words, it has a low knee point, low ratio, and it provides the greatest amount of linear, in other words, read linear, because linear gain on an input-output function always means more than compression. So these were weaker hearing aids meant to fit mild to moderate sensory neural loss. So maybe their gain might have been 40 dB or something like that. They weren't a strong hearing aids, but they provided linear gain. Their maximum gain was applied to soft inputs below the knee point, below, say, 40 dB. Knee points were low in WDRC. And then they provided a weak degree of compression for both medium and louder inputs. Whereas output limiting, you'll recall, was usually strong like bull, provided maximum gain, maybe 60, 70 dB of gain for soft inputs, and almost some of that for medium inputs, and then it would slam on the brakes and apply a high degree of compression. So it waited longer to go into compression, i.e. had a higher knee point, and when it went into compression, it really went into compression, that is, had a higher compression ratio. So output limiting compression, high and high, high knee point, high ratio. WDRC, low and low, okay, low knee point, low ratio. And the linear gain of WDRC hearing aids was mainly for very soft inputs below the knee point. So the focus was on imitating outer hair cells by amplifying soft sound. So here we go. Output limiting, linear are close cousins, older types. WDRC was the new kid on the block. So when previous linear hearing aid wearers were fit with WDRC for the first time, they would often say, the WDR, it doesn't sound loud enough for speech. Well, that's because the hearing aid was already going into compression for average speech-like inputs. And the linear hearing aid wearer wasn't used to this. He or she was more accommodated to or accustomed to the crystal clear sound of linear, albeit they had to always raise the gain for soft inputs and decrease the volume for loud inputs to get rid of the peak clipping distortion. So, but they still often would remark, yeah, it's too soft for speech. This is because with WDRC, the gain is greatest only for soft inputs. It is already less for moderate speech inputs. WDRC was best accepted if the client had not previously worn linear or output limiting compression hearing aids. So, if you're looking at WDRC here, look at its low knee point, its low ratio. So it's providing maximum gain for soft inputs. Hi, Sam. Glad somebody showed. Just great. You haven't missed too much. Alrighty, and so the greatest amount of gain, as we see for WDRC, was for the soft inputs, and already for average inputs like speech, the hearing aid was already going into compression, and that's why new users of WDRC who used to wear linear hearing aids would say, you know, the hearing aid doesn't provide enough loudness for average speech. I can't hear. They weren't accustomed to that. So that's really, in summary, as we close this whole compression section of the course, what we're doing here is summarizing and bringing us all the way to the end of analog hearing aids, being the mid-90s, and that's when lots of people were transferring over to WDRC. It was the new kid on the block, and this is really what we've gone over so far, and it's the clinical uses, however, of output limiting compression. You will recall it was good for severe to profound loss when you had both inner and outer damage. You had a small residual dynamic range because you couldn't hear till around 70 or 80 dB, and your loudness tolerance was maybe 110, so you had a squished dynamic range. They needed buku gain for both soft and medium input sounds, and then as the output approaches their loudness discomfort, they suddenly needed a dramatic compression. Sometimes conductive hearing loss, where surgery was not an option, they don't have a small dynamic range, but they do need power to overcome the mechanical disruption of the middle ear. And WDRC for them with its gradual drop in gain for increased input intensity would not be appropriate. So conductive hearing loss often preferred output limiting compression or linear. They didn't have a narrower dynamic range. Remember, conductive hearing loss, both the floor and the ceiling have gone up. So conductive hearing loss is a totally different kettle of fish. Think of an elevator going up. Both the floor, the whole box is rising. Anyway, how are you doing, Sam?
Not too bad. Been a busy day.
Good stuff. All right. Yeah, I was saying at the very beginning of this, I'm not sure if you missed the first 5 minutes of the talk today, but we're really summing everything up. And this section's going to address where analog hearing aids ended. We're a little bit ahead of schedule. Next week, we're going to look more at dynamic aspects of compression, and then we're done the compression section. And after that's a midterm, and then we'll cover more on digital hearing aids. But the purpose of today is to really summarize. So here we go. Now, so you know all of this stuff. This is all from last week, okay? But do internalize how WDRC may not be good for conductive hearing loss. Remember, both their floor has gone up, their hearing levels, and their UCLs have gone up. So the whole thing, like a box, has gone up. They don't have a reduced dynamic range. They are not going to benefit from a group. Oops, that's Sam Christensen took that one away. Okay, they're not going to benefit from this gradual reduction of amplification as the inputs gradually increase. On the contrary, they would prefer the left. Power, wonder working power, okay, because they've got a mechanical disruption taking place in the middle ear. Moving along here, so the clinical uses of WDRC, and remember in summary too, this is important here too. Tie these things together. How are they adjusted? Remember, output limiting and maximum power output adjustments were found together. Looking here, okay? What's adjusted on the left? The red. This would be either lowered or raised. Not sure. Yeah, there you go. You could raise or lower that. That was the adjustment for high power output limiting compression. On the other hand, on the right for WDRC, what was the adjustment there? It was changing the amount of gain for soft inputs. Recall, here you're moving the knee point as well, and here you're moving the knee point. But moving the knee point here involves raising or lowering the MPO, whereas moving the knee point here involves changing the gain for what? Soft sounds. So you can see all of this is for soft inputs. And why would you want to adjust this? Because if you had maximum gain for soft inputs, the client might hear, especially the person who had good low frequency hearing, might hear internal hearing aid noise. So when you have the hearing aid providing a lot of gain, it's going to make internal noise audible to the listener. So you may want to have to reduce some of that gain for soft sounds. That's why it was adjustable. Here you had this was adjustable because of the client's uncomfortable loudness level. As you know, the MPO should be around 15 dB higher than the client's UCLs, because the UCLs are measured in dBHL, and this is in dBSPL. And the difference between SPL and HL at the speech frequencies is average about 15 dB. So there's that, and just summarizing from what we did before too. Clinical uses of WDRC, adults with presbycusis. So mild to moderate. So which type has the biggest clinical application? Obviously WDRC did. Much bigger, because most people have mild to moderate loss. All of this stuff is review. We've seen this 1,000 times. Outer hair cell damage, leaving person with a larger dynamic range than he or she would have with a severe loss. Linear gain is always maximum gain, so the hearing aid acts like outer hair cells, amplifying soft inputs with maximum gain. Soft inputs with maximum gain. linear gain for soft inputs only, and then a weak degree of compression over a wide range of inputs. A weak degree of compression over a wide range of inputs. This restores normal loudness growth for mild to moderate sensory neural loss. Not sure if I have that picture, but big hairy deal. You know what I mean? So here on the left is output limiting compression shown in terms of a frequency response instead of in terms of input-output functions. On the left, we're looking at it in terms of a frequency response. Frequency, gain. This is the fictitious hearing aid on a spec sheet or something. I'm making something up here, but 40 dB inputs, I might have a lot of gain. 60 dB inputs, lots of gain. Suddenly, with 80 dB inputs, the gain is reduced. And again, suddenly the compression is applied. As soon as the input plus the gain would hit the MPO of the hearing aid, suddenly there's a lot of compression. On the other hand, WDRC. 40 dB, soft inputs, lots of gain. Average inputs already, the hearing aid is slowing down. Loud inputs, still a further reduction in gain. And again, that's because maximum gain was only for soft sounds, and progressively less and less gain is applied as the inputs go up. Back to our notes. So, some clinical observations with wide dynamic range. And again, what was the adjustment? It was called the TK control. The adjustment with WDRC, of course, was this, as we said on the right. Sticking back to our notes here again, clinical observations with WDRC. Some said speech wasn't loud enough because they were used to linear, more gain from medium input. Some said, I hear people at other tables louder than the person across from me. Now think about that one. Put a star by that one, because you're going to run into that in clinic. Serious. People may say when you fit them with the hearing aids, you know, I hear people further away better than I hear the person across the table from me. Why? Because WDRC gives progressively less gain, or I should say for most gain, for softer inputs, and people further away is a softer input. So it's going to amplify the crap out of it. And then other people at other tables give softer inputs to the hearing aid mic. The solution there would be to raise the knee point. In other words, decrease the gain for soft inputs. See, that's once again why the TK adjustment existed in the first place. Move on down to page 2. Let's talk about the two twins, Bill and Till. These are two types or subsets of WDRC. Okay? Basically, Bill is WDRC confined to the bass frequencies only. These were two types or subsets of WDRC. One was Till, treble increase at low levels. The other one was Bill, bass increase at low levels. These do not exist anymore. This is how analog hearing aids ended. 1995, 1996. They were two-channel hearing aids. In the low channel was Bill. In the high channel was Till. Let's describe each by themselves first. Two types or subsets of WDRC. Like all wide dynamic range compression, as the intensity is increased, the gain goes down. The difference is that this happens only at some frequencies. Recall, WDRC gives different amounts of gain across a wide range of inputs, from medium to loud. So here you go. Straight WDRC. It's changing its gain over a wide range of inputs. But when you're starting to look at Bill, look at Bill. This spreading of the lines only occurs in the lows. And until the spreading of the line mostly occurs in the trebles. That's why they were called bass increase at low levels. Bass increase at soft input levels. The 40, 60, and 80 refer to input sound levels. And till, treble increase at low levels. And again, maximum treble gain for soft inputs. Progressively less and less treble gain as the inputs go up. Each of these had a philosophy. Bill was based on the upward spread of masking. Remember this one from last year? Remember this one from anatomy class in cochlear physiology? See these traveling waves shaped like kites? Okay, this was your basilar membrane with all the hair cells. This would be the low frequency hair cells, high frequency hair cells. Sound entering the cochlea, okay? So you're making you're making this yellow line flop like this wave, and that flopping like the wave stimulates high frequency hair cells, I should say low frequency hair cells. And a high frequency traveling wave is sticking more toward the base of the cochlea. It has a shorter traveling wave. Recall they're asymmetrical, steep front, shallow tail. Always remember that, okay? Bill was said to reduce the upward spread of masking. How so? Here's the upward spread of masking. Low frequencies mask highs better than high frequencies mask lows. In other words, the soft rumbling of a truck, or the loud rumbling of a truck, I should say, because you can see this as greater amplitude, its envelope will still involve the traveling wave of a peeping canary in your kitchen. This is the peeping of a canary. This is the loud rumbling of a truck. Blah, 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 blah. It will mask the peep, 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 peep of a canary. Why? Because its traveling wave envelope will cover that of the soft peeping canary. And as we said last year, Miss Hairy Canary can peep, 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 peep all she wants. And she can peep really loudly, but her traveling wave, the traveling wave that results as a result of her peeping, isn't going to come out and mask the soft rumbling of a truck. And that's why we say lows mask highs better than highs mask lows. The upward spread of masking. As you learned in 110, psychoacoustics, as you learned in 120, anatomy. Well, Bill was said to address this fact. It said low frequency noise is like the bull in a china shop. High frequency consonants are like the china teacups. So the compression was focused on the low frequencies. Okay, so this is where you wanted your action. So if low frequencies came in that were loud, the compression would reduce them. So it's WDRC, much like this, only instead of straight WDRC, it is WDRC confined to the base frequencies. And till is the opposite. Instead of WDRC spread over the whole frequency range, now you're confining it to the high frequencies. Now, who did what? Well, Bill was a huge thing done by Oticon. The hearing aid company Oticon is big on Bill. They're big on Bill. Okay? Oticon was hyped about it. And that was where they hung their hat. That was their philosophy. That was their religion. People come at this field with different perspectives. And then on the other hand, you had the inventor of WDRC, Mead, M-E-A-D, Killian, K-I-L-L-I-O-N, lives in Chicago, in his mid-80s now, still living, he's retired, but he's the inventor of the first WDRC hearing aid called the K-amp, and the K-amp was mainly till. He didn't go for the bill business. That's what Oticon liked. Killian said, nah, you know what? Most people have hearing loss in the treble frequencies. They've got trouble hearing treble. So I'm going to make the hearing aid compression active where they've got most hearing loss. And most people's hearing loss slopes down. They have good hearing in the lows, poorer in the highs. So I'm going to give very, very little gain to the low frequencies. In other words, I'm going to do this, said Killian. Very little gain to the low frequencies. And with soft inputs, I'm going to give buku gain. If soft treble sounds come in, I'm going to give them lots of gain. And if average treble sounds come in, I'm going to reduce the gain. And when loud treble sounds come in, I'm really going to reduce the gain. So different strokes for different folks. Okay? This was a philosophy meant to reduce the upward spread of masking. Till said, nah, way too intellectual. I want the compression active in the area where the person has the hearing loss. And also, Till also said this, outer ear canal resonances. When the hearing aid, when they're going to make compression concentrate on the high frequencies, and they're going to make the gain for loud inputs look just like the natural ear canal resonance. Make the gain for, near the 80, see that blue? They're going to make the gain look just like the outer ear canal resonance. This will, they said, make the hearing aid acoustically transparent for loud sounds, because loud sounds, the person with mild to moderate hearing loss doesn't require any amplification at all for loud sounds. Their loudness growth comes together. Remember, and that's a picture I wish I had in this one, but you know the loudness growth thing, okay, that graph we always show. So it's going to make the hearing aid acoustically transparent for loud inputs. In other words, it's going to look just like the gain is going to look just like the outer ear canal resonance. That's kind of weird. I don't know. Just again, just a philosophy. Strange but true. So basically, that's the story of Bill and Till. And then we get to programmable. So now let's look at our notes and see where we've come. Read with me. Bill and Till, excuse me, both use WDRC. So WDRC had a nickname called intensity-dependent compression because WDRC did this. So the intensity-dependent compression. Bill and Till were subsets of general WDRC, and so they became called frequency-dependent compression. You often heard the name frequency-dependent compression. And again, compare figure 510 to figure 59. Compare figure 510 to figure 59 out of my textbook. Basically, that's what I'm trying to get you to do, okay? This is the history. Bill and Till were big time when hearing aids had 1 or 2 channels. Today's digital hearing aids have many channels. Multi-channel fitting flexibility today has overruled Bill and Till. Put a star by this one. You will not see Bill and Till on any hearing aid software today. It's gone. But it was a big deal when hearing aids had 2 channels. People would put Bill in the low channel and Till in the high channel. Bill was WDRC confined to the lows. As input intensity is increased, the gain in the lows goes down. Claimed to reduce the upward spread of masking. Vowels are the bull in the china shop. You must prevent them from masking the fragile high-frequency consonants. The circuit was often called the Manhattan Circuit. Called this because at an ASHA, American Speech and Hearing Association conference, they had a naming contest. The complex circuitry, someone said, looks like the skyline of Manhattan. So they called it the Manhattan Circuit. Bill. Weird. Oticon multifocus, not the digifocus, remember? That's the first Oticon digital hearing aid. The last Oticon analog high-end hearing aid, the multifocus of the mid-90s, was an example of Bill. Okay, it's not one of the first digital hearing aids, so cross that out. It's the last analog hearing aid. Okay, so get rid of this. It's the last analog hearing aid. last analog hearing aid by Oticon. It used Bill along with what's called syllabic detection. That's what we're going to cover in Unit 4 when we talk about dynamic aspects of compression. I'll go no further than to say today syllabic detection means when the hearing aid goes into compression, it does so quickly over time. It doesn't gradually go into compression or gradually come out of compression, but we'll discuss that more later. Okay, please don't refer that to a sudden degree of compression in output limiting hearing aids. That just means an application of compression. As soon as the output hit the MPO, then the hearing aid would go into a high degree of compression. You, of course, always know that, but don't confuse that with this. This is talking about quick in terms of time, T-I-M-E, okay? The other isn't. Till was double. We'll talk about that in another unit, mañana. Till, on the other hand, was WDRC confined to the high frequencies. As the input intensity increased, the gain in the highs went down. Most people have high-frequency sensory neural loss with reduced dynamic range for the high frequencies. So, Killian said, provide most gain for the highs at soft inputs and reduce gain for the highs as the high-frequency inputs get louder. Okay, so it's WDRC confined to the highs. The K-amp trademark, mid-90s, was an early example of till, a very popular analog hearing aid invented by Meade Killian. He was a big name in the field. Now I'm going to just, at the risk of going too quickly, I'm going to slow down here and make sure we have one point clear, and I'm going to highlight this sentence again. Okay? When you're thinking about dynamic aspects of compression, what we will be covering in the next unit, Unit 4, that's talking about how quickly in time the hearing aid goes into compression. Let me describe that to you. If a sound gradually becomes louder like this, is the hearing aid compression gradually beginning to occur? Or did the hearing aid compression, in other words, if a door slammed, okay, did the hearing aid go into compression quickly? Whereas if the sound coming into the hearing aid got loud very slowly, did the compression imitate that? In other words, gradually go into compression. Okay, that's what's meant by dynamic aspects of compression. Did it have a quick attack time or a quick release time? Always think about that as your watch, like point at your wrist. How quickly in time did the hearing aid kick into compression? That's what it is. Okay, how quickly in time did the hearing aid compression kick in? Don't think about it as how much compression. It's got nothing to do with that. You can have WDRC with quick attack release times. You can have output limiting with quick attack release times. You can have output limiting with slow attack release times. You can have WDRC with slow attack release times. So it's got nothing to do with the knee point or the ratio. Now, what we've got left in this particular unit is multi-channel programmable hearing aids. Okay, and that's how we can basically finish this section. You know what I think I'm going to do? I'm going to make sure that we've got this all together. I'm going to start from the top again. We've got about 25 minutes left in this Zoom session, and we've raced through it, but let's just kind of read it again. Linear and output limiting compression, older types, close cousins. Output limiting was the first compression. It was meant to imitate linear with peak clipping, and instead of limiting the MPO with peak clipping, it used a high degree of compression. Uses of WDRC below. But just follow this. Then came WDRC, 1990. Okay? It was the new kid on the block. People didn't know what to do with it. Most clinicians had only a good inkling of on the left. Okay, they didn't know what this was. They would switch their hearing aid wearers from linear hearing aids, which were something like this, to something like this, especially if the person had mild to moderate loss. But look what's happening here. This is already going into compression with average inputs like speech. And so the client would often say, this hearing aid isn't loud enough when regular people are talking. This hearing aid is amplifying people at tables further away better than the guy across the table. Well, people at tables further away are softer, and the hearing aid is providing its maximum linear gain. So output limiting was the first type. WDRC came later. And if you categorize all types of compression, let's look at this summary of compression. On the left, you have linear. Now look at here, all these bars here, okay? Call these the input, call the arrows the gain, and call this whole set of bars the output. Input plus gain is output. So linear hearing aids, yellow bar, soft inputs. It would amplify soft inputs to be up here. Average inputs. It would amplify average inputs by the same amount. Remember, linear gain gives the same gain for all inputs. Okay. And then loud inputs like the red, they would be amplified by the same amount, but no, peak clipping, cut them off. So the hearing aid would distort like crazy. The first compression used was output limiting, a close cousin to linear. Like linear, soft sounds amplified by a lot. Like linear, average sounds amplified by a lot. But unlike linear, loud sounds were given a sudden degree of compression. And again, when I say that word sudden, don't think so much in terms of time, think of amount. They were given a huge amount of compression, okay? Like the kid in his dad's car slamming on the brakes, you've got a dramatic gain reduction, okay? So there you go. Otherwise, everything is the same as the left, only instead of using peak clipping, it uses a big degree of compression. So that's why I always say output limiting was a close cousin of linear. When you look on the right, this was the new kid on the block. Input is these bars. Once again, gain is the arrows. And once again, these bars are the output. Input plus gain is output. And like the other two on the left and the middle, soft sounds by WDRC would be amplified by a lot. But unlike the other two, average sounds already were amplified by less. Contrast that to the blue here. The blue here, lots. The blue here, not. So soft, average, loud inputs. Soft, average, loud outputs. Okay? The gain is the arrows. The only thing similar on the rightmost panel is that for soft sounds. And if you compare that, and if you look, yeah, the only similarity between here and here is the soft stuff. So now you're going already average inputs. The brakes are being put on. Look at the distance between this blue and these blues. Okay? Singing the blues. Okay? Already the WDRC is going into some compression, whereas this one didn't. Okay? And then loud inputs wouldn't be amplified by much at all. So here you can see that the gain is gradually being reduced, whereas here the gain is max, and then a dramatic degree of compression. And over here is another summary, just showing you in terms of hearing loss, in how compression was applied in analog hearing aids. Mild to moderate loss. Input compression was one hearing aid type. When you adjusted the volume control, both the gain and the MPO went up. We covered that last week, so no need to worry about it because this happens automatically in today's digital hearing aids. So think no more about input versus output compression. That happens automatically in today's digital hearing aids. And to review those, though, go back to last week and check them out, okay? Anyway, here, WDRC is used for mild to moderate loss. Here, output limiting compression is used for severe loss. I made a bit of an intersection here. And what kind of adjustment are you looking for? Adjusting the TK. Why? Because the threshold, adjusting the TK. Okay, because here you're most interested in the floor, adjusting the maximum gain for soft inputs. And the type of adjustment being done for severe hearing loss? MPO. So always remember, there's kind of two handles to grasp. One is the high knee point, high ratio, and high power. Look at this, the corner. And here's the low knee point, low ratio, low power. And then how they are each adjusted. The MPO is adjusted here. The gain for soft inputs is adjusted here. Summarizing. The whole purpose of this one is to summarize the situation. Then we went into good old Bill and Till, but the clinical uses, make sure you look at that, because that's how it was applied in analog hearing aids. Remember, analog hearing aids were either one type of compression or the other type. They were, if you ordered the wrong one, you'd have to send it back and wait a week or so to get the other one from the manufacturer. So the 1990s was really the golden age of compression. That's when people had to know their compressions, because the hearing aid was one or it was the other. Today, it's all software. So you can make the hearing aid output limiting. You can make it WDRC. And usually the software does it for you. And as I joked last week, sometimes the software is, are you having trouble hearing the preacher every second Sunday at a 45-degree angle at a distance of 33 feet? If so, press this button. And if you don't look, you have no idea what happened. It's just a black box. And a lot of people are satisfied with that. And they say, oh, I don't get a lot of returns. Yeah, I know, but I'd rather have a bottle in front of me than doing a frontal lobotomy, if you know what I mean. I think we've kind of, so this is why I think it's very good to look at the history of what we've done. And that's why chapter 7 in my book is called History of Compression. And chapter 8 is application of all that stuff today. And we'll have a unit on digital implementations, but they use the same WDRC, they use the same output limiting, they use the same linear gain, they just combine it all together in one hearing aid. And you can do that because the hearing aids are software driven. And that, by the way, also explains why ANSI isn't done very much today, because ANSI tests the hardware of a hearing aid. And the hardware of your computer is your mouse, your keyboard, your monitor, and your CPU. Well, the hardware of a hearing aid is its mic, its amp, its receiver, its telecoil, its battery, and the software is everything else. So it's important to kind of, so today, manufacturer software has really increased, and ANSI has tended to decrease. Although, if someone comes in with a complaint, troubleshooting a hearing aid is really helped when you run an ANSI test, because ANSI gives an objective indication of a person's complaint in troubleshooting, and real ear measurement gives an objective verification of your fitting methods. So real ear gives objective info, ANSI gives objective info. Way, way better than sitting there asking, how does that sound? How does that sound? How does that sound? So looking in the notes here, sharing the screen. How are you today? Okay, we've gone through the application of the different types of compression. Make sure you have that stuff down. Do have down the clinical observations with wide dynamic range compression, especially 2 of them. This one here, I hear people louder at tables that are farther away from me better than I hear the guy across the table from me. And again, that's because people at other tables give softer inputs to the hearing aid mic, and WDRC gives most amplification to those soft inputs. So it's going to amplify the snot out of people sitting further away, and its gain is going to be reduced for the guy sitting 3 feet in front of you. The other observation with WDRC is speech doesn't tend to be very loud. Well, the guy across the table, 3 feet away from you, is speaking, and his input is 65 dB SPL. Well, at 65, oh man, where did that go? At 65 dB SPL, the hearing aid's already in compression, as you can see. So what we've done is all of that. Then we covered Bill and Till as being 2 types of WDRC compression, and know the philosophy behind each one, okay? Because the philosophy was the upward spread of masking. Here's Bill to reduce the upward spread of masking, big time, as held by Oticon. Know that the Manhattan Circuit is the name that was associated with Bill. Know the philosophy behind Bill, namely to reduce the upward spread of masking. Lows masking highs better than highs masking lows. The peeping of a canary, the soft mumble of a truck. The loud rumble of a truck can mask the soft peeping of a canary better than the loud peeping of a canary can mask the soft rumble of a truck. Therefore, when you provide WDRC for low frequency sounds, you are reducing the upward spread of masking. You're reducing the gain for the low frequency sounds that would otherwise mask the highs. Till is Meade-Killian, an emphasis on a different syllable. He is saying something totally different. This is a big intellectual philosophy touted by Oticon. This was found on the K-amp. Most people have high frequency hearing loss, and so look at on the left. There's hardly any gain provided for the lows because the guy has good hearing in the lows. Let's make buku treble gain for soft 40 dB inputs. Let's already start reducing the gain for 60 dB inputs, and less gain still for loud inputs. Okay, so just a different philosophy. One's Buddhist and the other one's Hindu. I don't know, just different views. Now we get to programmable versus multi-channel, and we will continue on this one next week. I'm going to focus on this one. I think that's what we'll do. We've got time on our side, and that's always great. But multi-channel and programmable hearing aids. Programmable hearing aids. Look on the left. A mic, an amp, a receiver, a volume control, a compression circuit. Program 1, program 2. The listener can change the program. Did you know this was found on analog hearing aids? Programmable hearing aids already existed in the 1980s. Look at this. Here's a BTE. It was plugged in to a device like this. And this device, you could change the gain across the frequencies, and you could change the MPO. Sometimes the listener could wear this around his neck, and this would communicate wirelessly to this, and you could program his hearing aids. So please don't think Programmable came out with digital hearing aids, because it didn't. Okay, it's been used for years. The nice thing about it was, look at this. I could change the gain. I could change the bass. You could do all kinds of things with that programmable hearing aid. Today, we often have more than 2 programs. Look at these 3 programs. This is a fictitious hearing aid. The main program would be the solid line. Here's a fictitious frequency response based on some fictitious hearing loss with some fictitious fitting method. We'll call it NAL. Okay? So here's some guy who lives in a van down by the river, and this is the frequency response in his main program. Program 2, the dashed line, might be for listening in noise. Because when you're listening in noise, you want less low frequency gain and you want more high frequency gain so that the treble consonants are made louder. So it's like a teeter-totter almost. You're getting a nice broad frequency response in quiet, and then in noise, you're doing this. You're deliberately reducing the lows and increasing the highs. And then you might have it that maybe the person likes music. And music might be the third program. Because music, what do a lot of people use on their ghetto blasters? Low boost, bass boost. So you want the big, because what's most music? 125, 250, 500. By the time you've gone to 1,000 hertz, you're out of the range of music. Okay, music compared to speech is relatively low frequency. So music, a third channel might be a real broad frequency response, the dotted lines. So the listener could toggle, and this was already back in the late 1980s. Okay, so programmable has existed for years and years and years. What's newer was multi-channel. So programmable hearing aids, you can read this. They often called it a digital screwdriver. Ooh, look, we can plug the hearing aid into a computer. And look, we can program it without using our screwdrivers. Because it used to be that you had a screwdriver or like a screw here and a screw here. And you'd have to, with eyeglass screwdrivers, you'd change the lows, you'd change the gain for highs, you'd change the MPO. Ooh, now we can plug it in. Ooh, big events in the lives of little people, okay? Well, read your programmable. We got a digital screwdriver, man, but the hearing aid wasn't digital, okay? The only thing digital was the computer used to program it. Got it? Get it? Good. Programmable hearing aids then could have one program or more than one program, usually 2 to 3. That's what we've covered. Programs for listening in quiet versus listening in noise versus listening to music. Today, the programs can also use directional versus omni. So in here, where are we going? Oops, not there, not here. Here. This program might use omnidirectional mic. This program might reduce the lows and increase the highs, but also use a directional mic because it's for listening in noise. And this program here might boost up the lows but turn off the directional mic again. So all kinds of things can occur with programmable. When you look at multi-channel, that's a different kettle of fish. Look at multi-channel. Whoops, multi-channel on the right. The first multi-channel hearing aids were analog. 1995 was the first one. Came out of Unitron. It was called the Sound FX, Sound Effects. I remember it well. But it's long gone, but here's how it worked. Sound came into the mic, and then there was a band splitter. And it split it into till and bill. You could adjust the till, you could adjust the bill, and then they were reunited and spit out of the receiver. Multi-channel. So if we go past this, look at multi-channel. You could change the amount of bill. You could change the amount of till. And then suddenly, bill and till disappeared. They disappeared because no longer did those philosophies rule. Now you could fit by simply, with a 2-channel hearing aid, I could totally change the amount of amplification I was using here. This is still WDRC, and this is still WDRC, giving most gain to soft inputs, less gain to louder and louder inputs, same over here. But the philosophies behind bill and till disappeared, went into the hindsight, because what you could do was you could adjust the crap out of this hearing aid. I could take these and lower them. I could take these and raise them. I could take these and lower them. I could take these and raise them. In addition, I could make where the high and low frequencies met. I could change that. So now what you've got is a hearing aid like the letter H. I can change the gain for lows. I can change the compression, the WDRC for lows. It's giving WDRC for highs. I can give it very little gain for lows or lots of gain for lows. I can give very little gain for highs or lots of gain for highs. And then I could adjust where the two channels met. Did I have a skinny low frequency channel and a wide high? Or did I have a skinny high frequency channel and a wide low? So, in other words, you could get anything you wanted at Alice's restaurant. You could fit flat losses by fitting both. You could fit sloping losses, reverse losses. And so that's why I say the philosophies behind Bill, reduce the upward spread of masking, and the philosophy behind Till, Meade, Killy, and all that stuff. Leave it alone. It's now fitting flexifricability. FF. Okay? Fitting flexibility was hugely increased by the advent of those vinyl analog hearing aids. They used WDRC in both channels, and you could adjust each channel completely independently of each other. And what's more, you could adjust where the two channels met. Did they meet at 500 hertz? Then I could provide, let's say for a precipitous loss going like so. Okay, I would make the low frequency channel really narrow, and I would turn it almost off. I'd make the high frequency channel really wide, because the guy's high frequency hearing loss would extend over a wide range, so I would provide him with lots of high frequency gain. Or if his loss dropped off at 1,000 hertz, what if his loss dropped off at 2,000 hertz? Then I'd make the low frequency channel really wide and give it very little gain, and make the high frequency channel really narrow and give it lots of gain. So you could fit losses that dropped off at 500. See, you guys now in your clinics, you're probably looking at me, Sam, like I'm nuts. But because you can adjust hearing aids till the cows come home today, but you couldn't in those days. You didn't have fitting software. It wasn't like that. And that's why I really like talking about the history, because if you can much more appreciate where we are now when you realize where they were in the past. It's just like any history, like learning about the pioneers and being thankful for electricity. I mean, so it's really something. I mean, that advent of that two-channel hearing aid with its WDRC was like wow, one hearing aid. I can fit with one hearing aid. I can fit all kinds of hearing losses. You couldn't do that before. And what's more, the hearing aid had WDRC in both channels. And people used to think about Bill and used to think about Till, and now, forget that. It's just fitting flexibility. Screw the philosophies behind it. We don't need that. It's just mostly now I can do whatever I want. So I'll stop there. And a little parting note, today is 9/11. We remember that. Anyway, thanks a lot for showing up there, Sam. Glad somebody did. I see the microwave behind your head. What you got cooking? All right, I will end this session. We'll see you next week. What I want to do next week, for anyone else who tunes in on this, I'm going to start out with a description again about programmable and multi-channel, kind of take where we left off today, and then we will also go into dynamic aspects of compression, Unit 4. So have both sets of notes, today's set of notes and next week's set of notes printed up. Okay, adios, live long and prosper. We'll see you when we look at you.